This week on Dig Me Out. With your hosts, Jason Zia and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. Join the union to vote on albums, pick one to discuss with us on the show, get access to bonus episodes, and our private Discord community. Keep the podcast ad-free and make the next episode happen by joining us at digmeoutpodcast.com. Jay, we're back with an old friend this week, joining us from across the planet in real time through the magic of satellite innovation. Mr. Gavin
Direct
Reed.
via satellite.
Yes, live via satellite. I'm gonna have to make some sort of a bumper for that. Gavin Reed, how are you? It's midnight there, right?
It is officially just after midnight here.
Oh wow.
So yeah, if bad things happen, it's not my fault.
But you
have a werewolf, really?
You have a newborn.
I do.
So you're not sleeping anyway, so this is fine.
No, that's right. She was awake 10 minutes ago, so she might still be awake now. I'm awake now. I'm actually hiding from her, so that's good.
You need to find your moments of sanity. We've all been there.
In a good hiding place.
Yeah, it's a good hiding place. Will you share with our audience the album that you have picked for this episode?
I will, and I will proceed it with. I originally sort of proposed this to be an 80s metal band, but we're here with the 90s because it is a 92 album. So here we are with a band called the Candy Harlots, who were desperate to be a late 80s hair metal band and just completely fumbled the timing and didn't become anything at all.
Yeah. So Jay and I'm assuming Jay and I am not familiar with this band. Jay, you're not familiar with this band, correct?
I am not.
So I researched a little bit of the history, obviously, because we'd like to talk about that. And yeah, fumbling is the best description of this, because it actually started in 87, which is not a bad time to start. I mean, if you're in 87, there are bands that in the US that started in 87. By 89, they had an album out and a chart single and stuff like that.
Some of them were signed immediately and had albums out within a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they started in 87 in Sydney. It was originally guitarist Ronnie Barrett, drummer Tony Cardinal, vocalist Mark Eaton, and bass guitarist Nick Zentkuti. Guitarist Mark DeHooger joined after. Did I get any of those pronunciations right?
Let's say you did. I'm not related to any of them, so
okay.
Sure.
So Zentkuti has an S. It's Zentkuti. I'm just ignoring the S.
I figured between you two, you've got better surnames to pronounce these correctly than I do with Reed.
Right. Anytime I see a vowel in front of a Z in a name, I go, that doesn't exist. It's just somebody put it there by accident and nobody has ever bothered to fix it over the years. So Zentkuti was replaced by Scott Millard and then Lino D. The addition of D on bass, I gave him another songwriter. He was a songwriter from a previous band. They got a deal with Virgin Records after 3 shows, and their manager turned it down.
Okay.
They had a manager, but the deal that they signed was they couldn't make the decision themselves. Only their manager could.
Oh, Jesus. So the manager's looking for the right cut for him.
Right. It probably wasn't a big enough advance. He's like, no, I need more cash up front.
Yeah.
But probably also in 87, you're looking at these guys, you're listening to these guys, and you're like, this could be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, there were bands getting signed immediately at this point who sounded exactly like this. So he might have thought, trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, he might have thought there was a bigger offer. He was wrong.
And this is pretty early on. So he sends them out on tour, and they end up touring, I'm assuming Australia, when these bands would go to tour there.
Yeah.
The Cult, Cheap Trick, DAD, the Angels. Like, I mean, they're getting out there with big bands.
Yeah, I mean, those are the
Still
bands.
couldn't get a deal. Nobody other than Virgin offered a deal. So they put out a 7-inch in April '89 on an indie label. I'm guessing that's probably a hard to find 7-inch. Stuff like that does not usually get mass produced. And then they put out another single called Danger in May of 1990. And again, still touring. They did tours with like Skid Row, Motley Crue. And then founding guitarist Ron Barrett died after an asthma attack at the age of 26.
Oh my God.
That is tragic to die at that age from that.
Missed it by a year.
Yeah. Peter Massey took over. Then guitarist Mark DeHooger was replaced by Phil Bowley. And then vocalist Mark Easton left. So at this point, the only person left from the original lineup is drummer Tony Cardinal. So they haven't even put out a record yet, and they are a true 80s metal band because they have replaced the entire lineup and have only have the drummer left.
They're also doing a reverse Spinal Tap.
They are. Yeah. Everybody's gone except for good. More Spinal Tap references so we can get into that. What is it? SEO with the new Spinal Tap movie and
we got to get
Spinal Tap. Spinal Tap.
Outranked in the movie.
Break up the win.
So Tony Lynch, AIZ. What is how do you pronounce that in Australia land?
I would say Ease.
Ease. Okay. So he joins as the new vocalist. Then their management deal expired, and Virgin Records said, "Hey guys, we noticed you haven't hooked up with anybody. Would you like to sign with us?" And they did. So after 4 years of basically pissing into the wind, doing nothing, they get the deal that they should have had 4 years ago.
At the exact moment when they were relevant.
Exactly. So they ended up doing a number of tours again, and then they re-released their one of the singles, and put out a tape called the Tease Tapes, which came out in '91 to promote the release of the album. And then the album didn't come out. It was supposed to come out in '91.
Jesus.
It didn't come out. So then they put out another EP called the Foreplay EP.
Because of course.
Which had 3 songs plus a Kinks cover. And then finally in May '92, their lone album, 5 Wicked Ways, came out. And, we're going to get into the actual record. But this is it for the band in terms of, them, their releases. And then shortly after, they fired the singer. They changed their names. They changed their name multiple times. They went from the Harlots. And then after they fired the singer, they changed their name to Helter Skelter. And then they changed their name again to the Harlots.
And there's also another Australian band now, probably, I think they're defunct now as well, called the Harlots, who are a completely different band who are really good.
After they fired
timeline.
Yeah. After they fired the singer on the album, Jordan Howe took over. And then eventually Tony Cardinal left and Tubby Wadsworth took over on drums.
Oh, Tubby
Wadsworth. That sounds like the name of a baseball player that would have been with like Babe Ruth.
Yeah, or a Spinal Tap's drummer.
Or a Spinal Tap's drummer. Hey, Tubby Wadsworth blew up on stage. It was
I thought it was like a minor character in Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Between Ace Lynch and Jordan Howe, there was another singer, Hayden Watt. So they had 4 lead singers in one album. That's pretty impressive, to be quite honest. All of these people, of course, because this is what you do in hard rock, played in a ton of different other bands afterwards. And the names of these bands are, I just want to just go through some of the names because they're fantastic.
Yeah, I have the giant list because it's hilarious.
Please read your list because you have it compiled. The list of band names after is hilarious. Please start.
All right, so we've got the Glam Savages, which is how did that wasn't actually used by somebody else, and I am trying to find some material by them. Suicide Squad, not so good. Soggy Porridge. Is there any other kind of porridge? If your porridge isn't soggy, is it?
Right.
Yeah, I don't
just
want
so-
hard porridge.
Oh, no, that's right. Rags and Riches, which is a very, very late 80s metal band name. You use an N. Shy Thunder. Some of them were in Mantissa, who we've reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Kelpies, Clusterfunk.
Clusterfunk.
Crackerjack, Killer Cowboys with a K.
Mm-hmm.
Jerks Incorporated.
What was the last one? I'm sorry, I laughed over Jerks Incorporated.
Dearly beloved, so that's not even funny.
That sounds like an insult. You like, where do you work? Jerks Incorporated?
Flog Puppet. Now I don't know if in America do you use the word flog? Do you
Not very
call
often.
someone flog?
Not often.
Flogging is like a beating, like somebody's taking a beating.
No, over here a flog is a wanker.
Oh, okay.
Do I need to explain wanker?
No, you don't need to. We know.
Yeah.
What, I think I could put two together. What a flog puppet is. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what a flog puppet is. And we got Beware the Dog, Ugly Little Secrets, Angry Snuff Puppet, Mistakes with an 8 and a Z in it. Then some of them were in Mass Appeal, who are actually a really good band, and we will get to Mass Appeal. Machine Gun Fellatio,
Oh my god.
who I'm kind of expecting one of the other Australians to bring up because they had a reasonable profile. Hate Tank, again with an 8. Pain Division, and Saint Lucifer, which could very well be a Metallica cover band.
Yeah.
There was also Stone Zone. Department of Gloom. Did you say that one?
No, I did not say that one.
There were so many crazy band names that like it sounds like a Spinal Tap. Like, well, we were in Stone Zone for a few months, and then we changed it to the Angry Snuff Puppet. Angry Snuff Puppet. I wonder if the Flog Puppet and Angry Snuff Puppet ever played together. It was a puppet show.
Yeah. It sounds like the script for Spinal Tap that they rejected because they went, "That's just there's no possibility that's true. That you're being stupid. Don't do it."
Yeah, some of these are just wild, and some of these guys ended up playing with members of other Australian bands like Rose Tattoo. Yeah. So there was like cross pollination between the hard rock bands. It says multiple times members of Rose Tattoo, but I think there's different members in different bands throughout the time. So yeah, that's all those guys have been doing stuff. And Tony Cardinal was in Screaming Tribesmen, which is a band that I've heard the name.
They're a little bit of a seminal band as more of a early 80s garage band.
Okay. So we got some comments over at Patreon. Actually, we got one from Chip. Of course, Chip is going to weigh in on this. This is important to get his perspective as he is our co-host on our 80s metal podcast, and this slots in well with that sound. He said, had I known about this album, I probably would have bought it when it came out. There's no real radio-friendly hits. Well, I could imagine The Other Side of Love being a hit if there was a good video to go along with it. But it fits alongside like Bang Tango, The Wildest Ways, Kicks, Backstreet Boys, Every Mother's Nightmare, What Are We Fighting For, and Vain, My Flame. I went to a lot of smaller glam metal shows in the 80s and early 90s where local bands opened for national touring bands. And a song like Lady Shakes sounds like all those local bands. It's got a memorable chorus, but isn't necessarily a great song. As noted, the timing of this release didn't do it any favors and is probably a few songs too long. But in the spirit of the podcast, a great choice to dig out. All right. Let's get into talking about the record. We've talked about a billion other bands that we have no
Can I
idea
just show
about.
you something that I only just found
Oh,
on the inside of the CD cover that I've never even seen before? So you know it's called Five Wicked Ways?
mm-hmm.
We have here, this is cards that are on the inside, and I assume it's each band member. That's one wicked way, and his photo and I don't know, some kind of sumo wrestling.
Uh,
Two wicked ways.
Are they using pictures from the Kama Sutra?
Yeah, that's
I believe
exactly what
so.
it is.
Yes.
It's
How
it's
naughty of them.
so they've like somebody's put a lot of ideas and effort into this for
I mean, they
I
had
mean, they
years.
7 years to
yeah,
work on it.
yeah.
they had some time to work on the artwork. No
Well,
rush.
we're lucky that
I have to
there's not
say
20
that insert
for-
concept is very Spinal Tap too. I could hear those guys explaining like, well, there's 5 members of the band, and we studied this Kama Sutra, and they go through.
We've deeply studied the Kama Sutra, and
Five
we've
wicked
assigned a
ways,
position to
wicked than the
each of
last.
us.
We're lucky there's not 27 cards in there for everybody who's been.
Oh my god. Former members. Jay, what works for you
Wow.
on the 1992 album Five Wicked Ways by Candy Harlots?
Well, this is, a good example of sometimes when you know less about the band, it's better. uh, I what I heard right away here that I really enjoyed was it sounded a lot like Bon Jovi. And I don't mean that in a generic way. I mean, like, this guy legitimate slings like John Bon Jovi. He's got the same phrasing, the same tone. He even uses the same kind of techniques for how to build hooks. It's very similar. And I don't think that's a bad thing because I don't think there's a lot of other singers that sound. I mean, there's a lot of other bands that are in the Bon Jovi sort of space, but I don't know. I can't think of a lot of other singers where I hear them and say that. So what that brings to the table, I think, is to me like this kind of blue collary storytelling kind of delivery. Um, it's a mix of almost speak singing and then turning that into a melody. I like when you get into like Sisters Crazy and Danger. It has more of a, I guess, 80s power pop feel to it.
Yeah.
Which I think combined with the guitars that are really loud and um, kind of big and open and a little, I don't want to say raw, but they're not like super slick Ibanez sounding 80s guitars. They sound like to me like Les Paul's played really loud. So they're capturing kind of that more 90s aesthetic and how to present this music, which is, turn the production on the guitars down a little bit, get big tones, don't use so much delay and, octave effects and all this weird stuff. Just try to get good raw Les Paul sound. So you've got this, I think, a heavier guitar tone with a singer that's very close to a John Bon Jovi or even like a Rick Springfield or that sort of singing style, which I think is a cool place to be. I think it, is accessible, has good energy. It's a little bit fun, but also it has enough edge to where it's not silly or too light. Um, it sticks pretty much on the format too. They venture a lot with the guitar tones and the guitar techniques. Sorry, the guitar playing style, and like sometimes there's finger picking stuff and sometimes there's, slide, but like the tone stays relatively close to the same. And then they don't introduce anything wild. There's no like synthesizers or other instrumentation that loses the plot. Again, I think they follow kind of the 90s interpretation of this genre, which would be more to me like a Super Suckers kind of thing, where it's like, okay, we're just going to play Les Paul's loud. We're going to try to write songs that are hooky with a lot of attitude, kind of be like an amped up bar band with a punk attitude. This isn't exactly that, but it's taken some of the production ideas that you would hear in some of those bands that are more common in the 90s, to give it some edge. But underneath it, I think when you look at and listen to the best material here, these sound like songs that were probably written in the 80s in more of a, you know, rock pop, power pop sort of genre, and they're amped up with louder guitars. And that's a good formula for me. You know, I like to be in that space on an album. It's a good high energy kind of fun listen. Lyrically, you know, it's fine. There's some stuff on here that's not great, but it's not, you know, one of the issues with stepping into the genre, especially in the 90s, is, you know, the lyrics can be a bad place to be. There's not a whole lot of compelling things sometimes these bands are going to be saying, especially in the early 90s when they're trying to be a little bit more serious or something. You know, you get these awkward, meaningless, or on the nose kind of lyrics. There's not too much of that here. So, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it felt like Rick Springfield, John Bon Jovi, Enough's Enough, Bang Tango kind of space, you know, album with a little bit of 90s grit on it. And I think that worked pretty well. What worked for you, Tim?
Well, this is an enjoyable listen out of the gate. Just it starts rocking from the beginning. And yes, I had the exact same thought as you. Man, this guy sounds like John Bon Jovi a lot, to the point where at the back half of the record, there's a song called "The Other Side of Love," and you can sing in and out of love to "The Other Side of Love." It's in the same key.
Yeah.
Like they go "Other Side of Love," which is just like one note off of "In and Out of Love."
Mm.
Weirdly, it more reminded me of like kind of like Dokken, I guess, musically.
Oh yeah, that did, yeah.
And throughout the record, there's like a ton of. Obviously, you're going to hear other bands and stuff, but I loved a lot of the guitar playing on this record. Like Wildest Way is got this guitar riff that matches the vocal. I want. And the guitars matching it. That was really cool. Backstreet Boys, which is not about the band, the Backstreet Boys, again has like, it has a little Bon Jovi feel, but then there's something else happening there. I don't know. I mean, Chip mentioned kicks. I don't know that I necessarily heard that or have enough experience with kicks to hear it, but it just sounded like a natural. It sounded of the world, like. The guitar tone, it's almost nastier guitar tones than I think of, like when I think of like Motley Crue or some of the big bands. those have such big produced guitars, whereas these almost reminded me of like some of the sleazier guitar stuff.
Yep.
To the point where I could even hear this weirdly like in the one of those bands in like the early 2000s that was sort of emulating this in an underground way.
Yep. That's what I was trying to get with some of the, when I'm saying 90s version of this sound. That's where I'm getting at. There's like this, there's a rawness to the guitars, and you have to pay attention to it, but there's just an edge and a rawness to the guitars that you wouldn't have heard in the 80s. Like they would have, like you can hear, I think, the fingers on the strings and like him leaning, the guitar player's like sounds of the, you know, their hands on the guitar and like the chords coming in. It sounds rawer and more live to me. And you just wouldn't have heard that in the 80s. Like they would have cleaned all that up and sort of softened it all.
Can I throw Dangerous Toys into that mix, perhaps?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that could. I mean, I don't know enough. I only know a few songs. That's one we should probably cover at some point. So if somebody wants to suggest some Dangerous Toys to either the 80s, I'm assuming they also had a 90s.
Yeah, Hellacious Acres has been suggested a couple times.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I really enjoyed putting this on and having it on. I think there are some really good hooks that I both in terms of the guitar playing and the vocals. I think the guitar playing really complements what is, like Chip said, there's not like, to me, an insanely radio friendly, unskinny bop, cherry pie, you know, glammy kind of rock single. But this is definitely in the vein of like Bang Tango that we've talked about, or one of those bands that was just below the mainstream a talk of the biggest bands that maybe the more hardcore fans would know. And I don't even know if this got released in the US. I should probably...
I mean, it's not on streaming, so that's usually a sign that it wasn't.
Yeah, no, this was not. This was a solely an Australian release. There's no other releases according to Discogs, and no reissues or anything, which kind of is too bad. Like if you did a remaster of this, just pump it up a little bit, and we'll get into what doesn't work, but this would sound awesome on vinyl with a really great remastering job. And I'm sure some little label out there that does reissues, like you know, like one of those metal labels from Europe, should probably jump on this. Anyway, Gavin, you brought this to us. What works for you on this record?
So just to be clear, I didn't necessarily bring this to everybody, and I don't always do this, as like my favorite album or the best album or blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. You know, I bring things that I hope are interesting and relevant to the pod, that everybody has definitely missed. I can assure you everybody missed this. So one of the things I really liked about it was coming back to it. And I have the CD here. I have the Foreplay EP as well, because obviously you can't listen to this without using that.
With a little foreplay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never a huge fan, and mainly because, again, when this came out, we were all like, "Oh, we don't listen to that anymore. That's crap." You know,
yeah.
We're like, "I'm not wearing this wig in '92. That's not
Mm-hmm.
cool."
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of got a little bit lost. And when I've come back to it for this, but I've been listening to it probably a bit over the last 18 months. Not a whole lot, but and it's better than I thought, if you know what I mean. And it's much better in headphones for me. Like, I've been playing it in the car and it doesn't hit me, and then I've been playing it at work through headphones, and when it's obviously a little bit louder, and obviously you don't have all the distractions. And I'm like, okay, this is actually pretty solid. Like, there's nothing really wrong with this. This is no worse than all of the sort of second tier 80s metal bands, and you've listed most of them already, you know. And there's a couple of flourishes that, like, the guitar's good, the singing's good. It's not of its time, so it's a 92 release. It should have, if it had been released in 87, which is probably when it should have been released, although that's not this singer, so maybe not. I think in '87 this makes a splash, at least in Australia,
Yeah.
because it gives us a band that fits what's going on in the world, But in '92 it doesn't fit in any way, shape, or form. The other thing I reckon is going on here is, I think because they were like an '87 band, an early '80s band, they're going for a certain aesthetic. They're going for the headbands and the leather vests and all the rest of it. And Australia just doesn't go in for that. We're like, what are you dressed as, you clown? So we've reviewed the Screaming Jets.
Yeah.
Reviewed their second album a while back, and I think one of the things you guys liked about it was that it sounded authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Like they sounded like people who should be saying that kind of thing. And I don't think the sound of this is a million miles away from that, but their look and everything is not authentic, especially in Australia.
Yeah.
So I don't think it gelled with us as a look, because nobody is we don't dress up like this to go to a band.
No.
You had interviewed you had the interview with Ricky Rocket the other week, and Chip was afraid to say, you all look like girls on the cover. If that was like, if you had released that album in Australia and that was an Australian band, every single person in the crowd would walk up and go, "Why do you look like girls?" That's just how it is,
Yeah.
So I think the biggest problem for it was it's of the wrong time. It's a late '80s album in '92 when the world completely changed in between the writing of the songs and the releasing of the songs. And there's, as we've discussed several times, there's a lot of those. And I think probably if they had dialed down the the hair metal image, because it's not really a huge hair metal sound, but they had the hair metal look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why I brought it to this, because it kind of fits with that. But I think if they had just dialed down and gone with the more of the Screaming Jets, Rose Tattoo, Aussie bar band kind of look,
Mm-hmm.
then they may not have been shunned, so to speak.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, as I say, what I like, when I come back to it, there's no real bad songs on this. They're good songs. They're better than I thought. They're better than I remembered. They're not great. They're not, but there's plenty of them have stuck in my mind afterwards. Like I've been seeing them in my head. Is there a power ballad on here, Tim?
Not really. Not a pure power ballad. There's some slower stuff and acoustic stuff, but there's nothing that you're going to break out the lighter and slow dance to at your high school prom.
Not by the official rules.
No.
I just read the headlines again today. Seems about 1,000 people, they all got blown away. Boxes and courtesy of it. Oh, there's got to be a better way, yeah. Tell me what the hell we're fighting for. Tell me what it is that we're fighting for. Do you think that anyone will restore?
But yeah, so yeah, look, I don't know if I even answered the question of what do I like, but it's why I brought it here. Is it's interesting. It's the 80s 90s adjacent sound that everything changed, and potentially. I mean, if this had been Skid Row's, 1.5 albums between the first two, it would have sold.
Yeah.
Or Bon Jovi's the better comparison. But I mean, I've got notes here saying there's songs that sound like Skid Row. There's a lot of that sound like Def Leppard on here. There's one very clear song that sounds like Bon Jovi covering Aerosmith. Song 10. What's that?
What are we fighting for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me what it is. It's the same lyric.
Right.
But sung with a Bon Jovi. That's horrible. I shouldn't sing. But yeah, there's a little bit of Guns N' Roses on Cheat on Me, song number 4.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of Motley Crue. You know, they're kind of crossing all of those things. But again, if you say this is released in '92, and most of these songs are written at least like 1990 at the latest, it's less derivative than it sounds by the time you hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It hit me as it reminded me a lot of Bon Jovi's New Jersey album, which
Yeah.
was huge. They toured forever for that. Had this come out then, which I think is 88.
Yep.
So like we're saying, like
I
if it
just
hits
looked that
the
up. Yep.
87, 88 window, a lot of this to me sounds compatible with that, but it's less produced. It's a little less produced. It's a little rawer. You know, there's potentially a crossover, but then also it brings in, people looking for something with a little more edge than Bon Jovi. But you can see a spot there. By the time you get to 92, we're in awkward land. These bands are trying to figure out what to do. They're trying to change. They're
Right.
starting to. We haven't totally, broken into full on alt rock, but obviously it's emerging, and there's a lot of. This is one of thousands of very strange records that come out between 1990 and probably I'd say late 92, 93.
So the thing you got to remember though is they had a different lead singer then. So
Right. They might
apparently
not
those
sound like this.
Yeah, they didn't. They could obviously the vocal is going to sound different, but you can. I guess one of the members of the band put out like on the internet the demos that they did with the original singer, so you can find those somewhere. When I was doing research, I was on a message board somewhere that you can look them up. Jay, what doesn't work for you on this record?
The biggest thing for me, man, the drums are terrible. And it's shocking to hear the only original member is the drummer. They just sound bad. I think the best example is just skip to Lady Shakes and listen to that intro. That is the worst drums I have ever heard on a record that starts off that song. It sounds like a drum machine, but I think what they're doing is using early triggers for drums. So you get these like really like out of balance synthetic drum sounds that also sound a little like off, like they're not quite in correct time, especially when you listen to it's a drum performance because you can hear these fills and little accents like you would never be able to do with a drum machine. But all of it sounds like slightly out of time to me. And the only thing I can put together is they're using triggers or drum pads, and it's the problem. One of the things you're fighting with that is like, you have to hit the drum and then it has to send a signal and then make the sound. So there's always a latency. So when you're playing as a drummer, like it's not like real drums where you hit it and you immediately hear it. It's like you're hitting it and it all has to be processed, then you hear it. And if it's all, done well, it's imperceptible, but it also can be challenging to play that way. And I don't know, when I hear this, I'm hearing bad drum sounds that don't fit the guitars and the vocals. They don't fit the mix. Sometimes they blend fine, and other times there'll be like this fill or this accent, and you're like, what the fuck was that? Like this drum comes out of nowhere. Or there's segments where it's just drums, like I said on Lady Shakes, and I'm like, I can't even listen to this. This is the worst thing I've ever heard. So I mean, once you get into the song, it's okay, but it's so awful in that section. So that is a big problem for me, and I think it's distracting, and then it also, I think, doesn't allow some of these songs to deliver what they're trying to deliver. Like either it cuts the power, it cuts the groove. On the songs that are quieter, there'll be sections where you're like, okay, he's doing a rim shot, it's fine, but then there'll be like a fill, and these toms come out of nowhere, and it's not like in a cool like big arena effect where you're like building up to a chorus. It's that, but in a really awkward kind of clumsy way that pulls you out of the song. So man, I just really struggle with the drums on this across the board. I think if you retrack the drums with just a regular drum kit, and I don't know if it could be also a performance problem. I mean, some of the parts just sound like a little sloppy and off, and I don't know if that's because of the technology they're using or what, but I think it could be a much better record if the drums were better. I think if you retrack all the drums and make them just sound less like early 90s, late 80s triggers, I think you get more into a space of the bands that we're talking about, Tim, which is like these later 90s, 2000s bands that are pulling, inspired by some of the 80s metal stuff, but doing it in more of a, punk bar band, raw kind of presentation. I think you can get there if you replace the drums on this record. The only other thing I think we've touched on it covers a lot of like other bands, and some of those work better than others. I think for me, when they're more in the pop side of it, it's working better. When they get too aggressive, like Cheat on Me, when they step into the like, we're going to do like, a Guns N' Roses song, aggressive Guns N' Roses song, it doesn't quite work as well. It's just not as good of a song. Like it's not as hooky. But the songs where they're, I think, trying to deliver a hook, letting the singer, I think, work. I think those songs work better for me. So that's what doesn't work. How about you, Tim?
I agree with you on the drums. When it's just like a straight beat, it's fine. But then every once in a while, these be like these tom fills would be like do 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 do, and I'm like,
right.
Especially when you had the headphones on and you can hear it like go across, and you're like, did they just overdub that?
Right. Yeah.
That sounds really odd. And I think drum wise, this just needed more like early Guns N' Roses, Steven Adler style.
Yep. Yep.
It just needed that nastiness. This is too, like, these drums sound more like what I would expect on like less of a hard rock album and more of like an AOR album.
That's it.
Yeah, they were bands like, I'm thinking of Sleaze, which is a super obscure band, but they're like, I think maybe what this band was trying to do, where they took like a kind of a sleazy guitar sound, but then they mixed it with like Def Leppard style drums. So you'd get this like big production with like a sleazy rock, songwriting and guitar style. Maybe that's what they're trying to do here. But it just doesn't quite come together. Those two elements just don't fit.
Yep. I agree. Like Chip said, there's not a killer song on here. I think that when you're like looking for what was going to break them out, like there really isn't one. There's some really decent, well-written songs, but there's nothing that's like, oh, this is gonna be the thing that connects with people. It's very predictable, I guess you'd say. There's nothing where you go, oh, that was an interesting choice to not do the chorus there and to go to a bridge instead of the chorus, like there's no chances that are really taken outside of, and not that I need them to be progressive in any way. I just like a twist every once in a while where like even Bon Jovi would do that. Like you think you're going to the next chorus, but then they would drop like a little extra pre-chorus the second time around, so you're not really ready. Oh, like, oh, I wasn't expecting that little part there. Or he changes, John's a really good songwriter and particularly with his melodies. So he will change like the second time through, the melody will change enough so that, oh, it's different the first time around. It's not the exact same melody in that verse. So you kind of get, it's not the, second verse same as the first. Whereas this tends to happen on most of these songs. I just wanted a little more variety. I'm curious as to how many of these songs were written before the singer got in the band, and like how many were left over from the previous singer, and they were just like sing these songs. But knowing that he was also a songwriter, like, did he bring his own songs? Did they rearrange things for him? I'd be curious to know that end of the story, because it's not like, when you're not singing your own song, you're sort of trapped in the cadences and the flow of the songs that the rest of the song. Now they might have completely torn things up.
To me, one on the Bon Jovi point, remember Bon Jovi also had the benefit of co-writing with Desmond Child and Bruce Fairbairn. So
yes, that's true.
Which this band I think would have benefited from, not those writers, but like, had they taken the deal in '87 and actually went through the sort of American or even European sort of production process and gotten hooked up with guys who wrote and produced in this genre, it would have been interesting to hear. Again, though, to your point, like, is this the material that we would have heard in '87? I think is a big question. To my ears, a lot of it does sound like it would, it could have been.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hear anything on here where I think, oh God, yeah, this was written in '91 or '92. Most of the stuff I'm hearing here, if you told me it was written in '87, '88, I believe you. And it's just a production that sounds to me more like this awkward period of '92 of like, where are we going? Are we getting raw or more, less produced and straightforward, or are we, using drum machines for everything? Like, what's the direction here is where it feels more 1992 to me.
Yeah. Gavin, is there anything that doesn't work for you on this record?
There is, unusually for my selections, where I normally think they're perfect. Well, number one, it's a bit long. You can take two songs off and it's almost irrelevant which two. It's just too long, because they're largely the same. I do disagree. I think Sisters Crazy could have made the radio in '87. I don't think there's any chance it makes the radio in '92. But I think it could have done at the time. One of my biggest issues with it is that they do the thing that I've mentioned it once before, but they don't really know how to close out a song. So they do the pantomime / variety show ending where they kind of either end on the chorus or the singer does the kind of thing,
Yeah.
like the one was the Sister Crazy and he's like, and she's dead, no, we didn't need that. That was so. They don't really know how to close it out at times.
Yeah.
I think also as an Australian, they use too many Americanisms. So they talk about crossing state lines, and you go, well, that's not, that's
a very feels very Bon Jovi-esque. Like
very Bon Jovi. That's right, but that's not. But if you're not even releasing the album in America, you probably want to, and we're as nationalistic as you are, so you're immediately taking it away from us a little bit with that. There were a few references there where I was like, I don't know, what are you doing there? Like, we're talking about guns. We don't have guns. We're talking about state lines. It's just, you just drive across the border here. It makes absolutely no difference to what you're doing. You have to throw fruit out because we have fruit fly, but that's it. So there were a few things like that annoyed me. I just think they mistimed it. You know, I think it sounds derivative in '92 because it's super derivative in '92. Bon Jovi's the very, very clear, you know, progenitor of it. But it's not a '92 album. It's an '87 album. My understanding is that the songs are from '87 and the vocalist redid the lyrics and vocals. I was going to say, don't quote me on that, but fuck it, quote me on that.
We're quoting Gavin Reed.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure you're also going to be the number one reference for Candy Harlots on the internet after this, so go for it. But yeah, probably the biggest misstep they had was it wasn't released when it was relevant. And if anything, in '87, as Australians, they were faking it a little bit from like an image perspective. And by the time they get to '92, you're completely faking it, and we hate you.
Well, I think we shouldn't miss we keep talking about Bon Jovi. I mean, Bon Jovi put out an album in 1992, and it did not sound as Bon Jovi as this does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was the album where they changed, like Black and White, Keep the Faith.
Oh yeah.
So that was, you know, they cut their hair. The album covers black and white. There's a different sound there. Like, I think now, if we listen to it now, we would be like, oh yeah, it's a Bon Jovi album. But at the time, it was pretty controversial. Like, it was them trying to be a little bit more sophisticated and maybe alternative, whatever that means. But it was definitely less Bon Jovi than maybe even this record is.
Well, I think one of you touched on this being, it's actually more of a pop album, but like, again, with the image, like they were trying to portray this hair metal image, but it's actually like a pop rock album. You went with the AOR, which is a tag I've only heard through you guys and through Chip, but I think it really fits that. But you know, that wasn't necessarily a known thing here at the time, so yeah.
And there's some of these different approaches we've talked about. Either like strip it down and go more raw is one approach. The other approach, I think, would be what you're talking about, Gavin, where you lean into the AOR side and just be like, we're going to be a pop rock band.
Yeah.
Now, those two in '92 are probably not going to be all over the radio. But what they do allow you to do is, if you stick to that sound, both of those two sounds built fan bases through the '90s. I mean, even their AOR stuff, especially in Europe, like a lot of those bands endured and did just fine. I mean, they weren't Survivor in 1985, but they were like having careers, putting out albums, making money, touring. And as the 2000s come through, like things loosen up, and there's a lot of bands that, keep having careers and keep working, and they stuck to either of those two sounds, and it works out. And I think, unfortunately, this band is trying to stand in the middle, which I think for us is super interesting and fun to listen to, but not great for a career.
Well, and as you just said, like if they had gone in either of those directions, it's unlikely they would have sold less albums than they actually sold.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there would have been some niche label.
Mm-hmm.
They go the arrow route. There would have been some niche label in Europe that would have picked them up and probably pushed them for a while.
Yeah.
And honestly, looking at all those, you mentioned the EP that you have, there's other EPs, there's the original singles. This is ripe for like a cherry red reissue, like double disc. Yeah. You don't even have to do the vinyl. Just do like a double disc, compile all the B-sides, the EPs. You could easily do that and introduce, like they do all sorts of obscure 80s, 70s, 90s music things. They did amazing reissues of the band Marion that we reviewed a long, long time ago, which was an obscure Britpop band that never really broke through. And they did these gorgeous multi-disc reissues with all of their B-sides, which I had been tracking down myself for years. And there's no reason why they couldn't do a band like this. Like this would be perfect for that. But I mean, there's so many bands like that it's probably hard to, get to do all of them.
I think they could fill an opening space on the DMO cruise.
There you go. which I will not be on because I refuse to get on a cruise ship.
So
After
do
watching-
I. Don't need a trough.
After watching Poop Cruise, I will never set foot on a.
Just bring your red bags and
If I go on a cruise ship, I'm bringing my own toilet. Like, sir, what is that? Oh, I brought my own mobile toilet, just in case.
I know how
down.
these ships run.
Yeah, I know what you're trying to pull here.
Why are you driving a forklift?
I'll just wheel it in on a dolly at my own little. Okay, let's talk about overall ratings on this record. I'll share the poll results from Patreon in just a moment. But worthy album, better EP, or decent single? Where do you land, Jay?
Well, despite all the criticism, I kind of think it's a worthy album. I mean, I have most of the tracks here highlighted. I did find myself, singing some of these songs. Now, what's weird is that the things I'm singing are like phrasings. Yeah, I see in my head, the stuff I'm waking up in the morning, and as weird thoughts are going through your head, and a lot of times it's music and like little bits and pieces of things. The things that from this album that are coming through are some of the vocal phrasings and lines. Maybe not necessarily like the big gang choruses, which I think is what they're trying to make the hook. To me, what the hook is usually is the lead vocal and some of the transitions or switches or emphasis or the builds or the counters to the big gang vocal. Those I found super sticky. I don't know. I just find this singer like really compelling in this genre. I would like to hear more, to be honest. So I think the songwriting overcomes the terrible drums. I think, you start to get used to where the awful parts are and just sort of anticipate them, or at least I did. Like, oh, this feels coming. Okay. And get past it and just get into the songs. And probably most people are not going to notice the terrible drumming that I noticed. It'll feel off to them and they won't quite know why, but I think that's why. But that said, it's one of those, like you say, Gavin, it's one of those weird lost forgotten albums that I think we like to obviously built this podcast on, that just resonate. And I understand why it was challenging for other people, but I also like the weirdness. I like that it sits in this, part of me enjoys that it sits in this very strange space that nobody else can really quite grasp or build a fan base around, but I'm fine with that. So worthy album for me. Where'd you land, Tim?
I'm also at a worthy album. I liked listening to this and just putting it on and having it playing while I was, working. If I'm digging down into it, yeah, there's a couple songs that I think aren't great. This probably should have just been 10 songs, 5 on each side of a vinyl would have been great in 1988 or 87. But like we've talked about, this just is terrible timing for this record to come out. So worthy album, but with caveats. That's where I'm at. Gavin?
Yeah, I'm at a worthy album, and I'm going to say when I suggested this, I wasn't necessarily. Again, I like I say, I put things forward so they're heard, and I was like, this is a bit of fun, and I was putting it forward more as the '80s thing because we don't, as Australians, we don't have much that fits with the '80s metal podcast from the visual perspective. We have a bit of sound, but it's more of we go more from a like a Black Sabbath or a thrash sound, and just a bunch of blokes in jeans. We don't lean into the look, and this is one of the very few bands that actually managed to sell any albums in Australia that actually, decided they'd have a go at the look as well. So that's why I brought it here. But having listened to it for a couple of weeks now, almost non-stop, I do enjoy it. There's absolutely some earworms here. It's too long, and I'm the one who never says that, but it's too long because it just doesn't need to keep going,
Especially because they don't know how to end the song.
Yeah, that's right. As I don't seem to know how to end this particular statement, but I'm happy to give it a worthy album. I feel it's a complete example of just completely missing the timing. I think that the tail of this album is completely missing the timing. You know, as you've said, maybe the drums I don't listen with that level of sophistication. And he's not the best singer in the world, but I think the singer is probably the better element of it. And I think they could have got somewhere, but they didn't. So be it. Here we are.
Here we are. Well, our patrons were split down the middle.
Both of us.
All three of you. 33%. 33% were the album, 33% better EP, 33% decent single, leaving 1% left over for a coaster, I guess. I don't know where that last 1% went. We'll start auditing. We'll get the Doge people in here to start auditing where that 1% went. But we felt a little bit differently than our community. I would suggest people go out and listen. This is on streaming, but you can go to places like YouTube where somebody has posted the entire album, or you can hit up Gavin. He'll hook you up.
If you're in the community, I've already given it to you.
Yes. So Gavin,
also,
thank you.
Buy these unashamedly Ed Hardy looking T-shirts too. So that's cool.
That aesthetic they had going on for the album cover at least felt more like 90s to me.
Yeah,
I feel a little bit like Jennifer Aniston trying to rock an MC5 reference, but as I keep pulling it up like this, yeah.
Thank you, Gavin, for bringing us another great record to check out that we did not ever hear of from your land down under.
Zero chance of anybody having heard of this unless I brought it to them. So
no. And now the internet will know, and the world will know about the Candy Harlots. Well, I want to remind people that if this episode brought back good memories, positive vibes, join us at digmeoutpodcast.com to explore our free archive of over 800 episodes, history of the band posts, and weekly new release roundups. Would you like more? You can get more by becoming a paid subscriber, which unlocks bonus podcast episodes covering 70s, 80s, and aughts rock, new release reviews, and access to our private Discord community. That's digmeoutpodcast.com. And while you're there, suggest an album you think deserves to be featured on a future episode of Dig Me Out. For Jay, I'm Tim. We're out, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.